Some of the hardest seasons in goalkeeping are the ones where nobody sees how much you're putting in. And that's where most goalkeepers stop believing. But before I get into this video, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Pannenberg. I'm a professional goalkeeper. It's my mission to help young goalkeepers like you develop supreme confidence and dominate on game day. If you get any value out of this video, like, subscribe, share with a goalkeeper friend. The bigger we build this community, it'll be a win-win for both of us. So I just recently got a message from a young goalkeeper, a college goalkeeper. He pretty much was asking and saying that he's putting in a lot of work. He's working very hard, but he just doesn't know when he's going to get his opportunity. It's so hard and so frustrating to be putting in the work on a daily basis and not getting the results and not starting and playing on the weekend. It's something I can definitely relate to. When I was reading it, it reminded me of something from my own career. So back in 2022, I was playing for Houston Dynamo 2 and MLS Next Pro. It was my first year with the team. Coming up toward the end of the season, kind of around August, I'd probably played about 5 or 6 games that season out of like 20 something at that point. There was a homegrown goalkeeper on the first team, and he pretty much played most of the games when he was around. I got some games here and there, which was awesome and did well with them. But I really hadn't been playing kind of toward that stretch, July, August, and I was getting frustrated. I wanted to play. I felt like I was working really hard. There came a week where I had a gym membership at a local gym, cheap gym, kind of dirty. And I have a stretching routine that I do. And I was doing that stretching routine there at the end of one of my workouts. And I ended up actually getting an infection in my leg. A little gross, I know, but it actually put me out of the travel for the weekend. We had an away game in Minnesota, and I actually got sick and wasn't able to go. And I was kind of just like laying in bed all weekend. I got some antibiotics and eventually got better that weekend. But I remember watching the game that weekend. We ended up beating Minnesota, the team, while they were away. And I remember watching them on the field celebrating with the water bottles, throwing it at each other because we were one step closer to making the playoffs. We hadn't made it yet, but we were just right around that mark. And I remember just laying there in the bed, just feeling miserable, obviously because I was sick, but also just felt left out from the team, wanted to be part of those celebrations. Like I said, saw a doctor, got some antibiotics, got better, got back into training that week, was training really hard. That weekend, we had a big game at home against St. Louis 2. So just for a little context, St. Louis, they play in MLS, St. Louis SC, FC, whatever. And back at the time, though, they only had a second team. The first team was starting the next year, but they were signing people already to the first team, but they were playing on the second team. So, for example, one of those players was Roman Berkey. He's still on St. Louis today, but he was playing for the second team, getting minutes that year because, again, they didn't have the first team. So there were a lot of really good players on this team. They were one of the top teams in our conference that we were battling with to get that playoff spot. So they were coming to play us. Big game. We were just points away from making playoffs. I remember, like I said, I was working hard that week. And the day before the game, I had trained with the second team. One of the academy goalkeepers had trained with the first team. And basically, after training, first team and second team, everyone kind of like meets at this main building. And I remember I got done with training, didn't really have any expectations for the weekend, just kind of thought things were going to be the same as last weekend. And I remember being in the building and that academy goalkeeper came up to me and he said, "Hey man, congratulations." And I said, "What?" And he said, the homegrown goalkeeper, he's traveling with the first team this weekend. They had a game in Seattle. So he was like, you're starting tomorrow. And I was like, I am? It was funny. It came from the academy goalkeeper. I didn't get it from the coaches or anything. And so apparently I was starting against St. Louis in one of our biggest games of the season. Soon thereafter, the coaches had told me. I went home that day and basically my mind was racing. I hadn't really played in a bit. And all I could think about was this game and how important it was. And, the impact it could have for me in the season. And, I go home, I'm mentally preparing, physically preparing that night and the next day. And the game comes up. I remember at the beginning of the game, I kind of had some little shaky moments, just kind of getting back into the feel of playing games. And there came a moment where they were playing around the top of our box. Someone laid it off for a shot for one of their players. And then this happened.
Ostrak and Diaz. Ostrak puts it in the area. Diaz, no shot. It's Watts. Oh, what a stop, Pannenberg!
So made a big time save for the team. We eventually go on to win the game 1-0. We got a goal in the second half. I remember being so stoked. I was so proud of myself for being ready for that moment and being ready to help the team. We celebrated on the field.
Last week we did it. We needed a result to happen for us, but we always win our control. But what's that smell like?
Also celebrated in the locker room as a team. Like I said, I was very proud of myself to have been ready to make the most of that moment. And yeah, like I said, we made the playoffs. Yeah, it was a great moment and a great memory. But I want you to walk away from this video just with two main lessons. So number one, going off that story, basically, there's a quote I saw one time at a place I was doing physical therapy, actually earlier that year, and it stuck with me ever since. It was written on a whiteboard, and it said, "You never know when you're moments away from a breakthrough." And for me, like I said, I think that is something I live my life by, I live my career by, and that was exactly what you saw in that moment. I had played a couple games that season, and like I said, I really hadn't played too many going up right into that point, but I had prepared hard that week. I'd been preparing all season long. And just because the first team decided to take the homegrown keeper to Seattle, I was a moment away from an opportunity. And there it was. And like I said, one of the biggest games of the season, helped the team out. But I want that to be a quote that you can take with you and remember that you can be preparing for so long for, my college career. I talk about this a lot. I played one game my freshman year. I played none my sophomore year, and all the success came my junior year. But all of the preparation and work that I had put in my freshman and sophomore years helped me to be ready for that junior year. But that was a lot of games to be sitting on a bench, a lot of games to be frustrated, a lot of time just waiting for my opportunity. But I just want you to know that your moment can come at any moment. Like I said, you never know when you're moments away from a breakthrough. So I want you to remind yourself constantly that life is always in motion. Anything can happen at any moment. And that's why you always have to be prepared. You always have to be prepared to play, to execute, to help your team win, to step on that field. Because again, like I said, you never know when that moment is going to come. And when that moment does come, you have to be ready because you never know when you're going to get another one. The other lesson I want you to take away from this as well is it's great to work hard. And I talk about that a lot. You have to work hard, but I also want you to think about you need to be ready for what the game is actually going to demand of you, right? We have to work both smart and hard. So what do I mean by all this? I have a former coach of mine. He was my coach in USL2, goalkeeper coach at Liberty University, Jake Berry. I've talked about him before. Awesome guy, awesome mentor for me. But he talks about how there was a goalkeeper coach who was at Duke, and he basically did a study where he looked at his goalkeeper from, I think he had just graduated, and he looked at every touch that he took. He analyzed and tagged every touch his goalkeeper took for 4 years. And basically it came down to that 90%, 85 to 90% of the touches he took in his 4 years were either distribution, crossing, or 1v1s. Only 10 to 15% were shot stopping. Now this begs the question, if you look at our training as goalkeepers, which obviously training should be preparing us to be ready for games. We don't just train just for training's sake. We train so we can be ready to play in games and make the most of games. How much of our training reflects that? Is it 10 to 15% shot stopping and then 85 to 90% of distribution, breakaways, crossing? I'm a big believer in, there's a principle, it's called the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, where everything in life is not always equal. There are some things that are going to have a higher impact than doing other things. So for an example, there have been off seasons where I have just trained and I've worked hard. Again, working hard. I'm up early. I'm putting the hours in, but all I'm really doing is like technique, volleys, diving, shot stopping. But then when it comes to a game, you need to be ready to play really well with your feet. You need to be ready to dominate your area aerially and win some balls in the air. You need to be ready for 1v1 situations. So if you're just working hard at shot stopping, which I would say is the majority of what goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches do, you might not be ready for what the game demands of you. So I want you to look at two things. One, look at what the game is demanding of you, right? Watch back your old games, watch professional games and see what are the main things that a goalkeeper must do in the game. And I would say number one is probably distribution, right? Nowadays, we have to be good with our feet, but that needs to be a part of your training individually and with your team to be ready for games, right? So that is one of those 20s in that 80-20 that is worth more than other things, right? So like I said, analyzing your own games, professional goalkeeper games, and see what is demanded of you and of them. But also look at your weaknesses too, right? We can work on our strengths all day long, but we also have to work on, and I want you to look at your weaknesses too, because that could be another area that means more to you than just working on what you're already really good at, right? If you're really a technically good goalkeeper and you just your training is just volleys and dives and shot stopping, again, you have to look at maybe you're weak at 1v1s. You need to deliberately make sure that that's something you're working on your own or in your goalkeeper training or with your coach. So big lesson number 2, make sure you are working not just hard, right? Again, work hard, but make sure you're doing it in an intentional, conscious, deliberate way that is getting you ready to be ready for games and the moments that actually count. We don't train just to train. We don't work hard just to work hard. We train and we work hard to be ready for the big moments, the moments to help our team win. So just in closing with all of this, I want to leave you with a story. I got it from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Awesome book, but he talks about a story. He calls it 3 Feet from Gold. So basically there was a man, and I think he lived on the East Coast, but there was this big gold rush going on in the West, right? California, Colorado, and he wanted to be a part of it. So basically he sold everything he had to have the money to go and participate in this gold rush. And there was this one area where apparently there was all this gold. And so he started digging and digging and digging with all of his equipment. And finally he found some. And there it was. And he thought that this was going to be the big mine of gold and he was going to find it all and get rich. And when he started digging out this gold, he found out it was only just like a nugget. And he was like, man, I came all this way. I sold all my stuff. I come all the way to Colorado from the East Coast, sold everything I had, bought all this equipment just for this. And he goes, you know what? I'm out. He sells all of the equipment to some local farmer, goes back home. Now he's in debt. And the farmer was smart enough to call in like a mine engineer or something, and someone who checked out the area and dug just a little deeper. He dug 3 feet deeper, and there was the biggest gold mine in all of Colorado. And the farmer is the one who got rich. So basically, what I want you to take from that story is just this idea that we were talking about of you just never know what's going to happen. You never know what is going to happen in your life and in your career if you just continue to believe and you continue to persist. Don't be the guy who is 3 feet from gold. Don't be the one who has put in all of this work, all of this time, all of this energy just to say, you know what, I'm done. If you've put in work, if you've put in energy, put in blood, sweat, and tears, make sure you get something out of it. I remember at Wake, it was my dream to play at Wake, and I had nothing to show for my freshman and sophomore years. And people were asking me, are you going to transfer and what are you going to do? And I said, in my head, I said, no way, man. I said, I am here. I have put in work my freshman and sophomore years. I've put in all this time. I said, I'm going to get a reward from it. So for you, if you've put in time, you've put in energy into something, get your reward, man. Double down on your habits, double down on your training, and make sure that you get something out of it. Don't stop when you're just 3 feet from gold, man. You're right there. Believe it and continue to put in the work. And I wasn't planning on reading this, but it's funny. I was reading one of my favorite books this morning, 3 Magic Words, and there's a section in it that relates just to what I was saying. And I thought it was funny because I was planning on recording this video on this topic, and this line came up. Just before I read this real quick, a farthing is pretty much just, it was a British coin, an old British coin back in the day. So that's what I mean when I say that. But this is what the author says. Here we go. Hard work is made easy work through knowing that none of our labors is wasted. The universe exacts the utmost farthing, but also returns the utmost farthing. For mutual exchange is the law. No matter the apparent thanklessness of your tasks, you can be assured that they are part of a purpose that will one day be fully revealed, a purpose grand and aspiring, which you become a part of when you keep faith and persevere. So I thought that was super fitting. That hit me so hard this morning. Because again, if you continue to work hard, you continue to believe in yourself, you will reach what you're going after. I know it can be frustrating in the moment to not get the results for all the hard work that you put in, but if you continue, you will get a harvest bigger than you can ever imagine. A quote that I love is, when it rains, it pours. Because this world doesn't work where it's like, I work hard today and tomorrow I get the result. I put in one, I get out one. You could be putting in for a long, long time, day by day by day by day. And then all of a sudden, like I said, when it rains, it pours. All of the blessings, all of the success all comes at once. And it will be in quantities larger than you've ever thought or ever believed. But that only happens if you continue to work and continue to believe. So I hope this video gives you a little inspiration. Remind yourself, A, you never know when you're moments away from a breakthrough. And also, number 2, like we talked about, make sure you are working on the right things that are going to help you be ready for the correct moments. Don't be a hard worker just to be a hard worker. Be a hard worker and be a smart worker. Be strategic, be intentional and conscious with your training. So, like I said, I hope this video gives you some value. It inspires you. Continue to work, continue to believe. If you get any value, like, share with a friend, and we'll talk soon.